question for more or less for Dr. Wright. As a sports, not a sports psychologist, but a behavioral psychologist, what do you think are some characteristics that make up an African American student athlete today, as it was, back in the 1950s, and how have things evolved, or how can things get better from where we are now?
So you're going to give me the tough question. Wow. I don't really look at it so much as how the African American student athlete has changed. I think there's a lot of stereotypes that we can see. You watch SportsCenter long enough, you'll see what's important to some people is getting on SportsCenter. There wasn't a SportsCenter when I was playing, so that wasn't really a goal. It wasn't about how you look dunking on somebody or scoring on somebody. It was about how you got to the goal line, act like you've been there before. So things have changed since I was playing football. Long time since you were playing. But one thing I can say that was prevalent when I was playing was what the gentleman at the end was talking about, as far as have something to fall back on and recognize what you need to do. And so I think my generation, as opposed to what I see now, it's not so much about me, or how good can I look, can I get on TV, can I stand over somebody after I hurt them or knock them down, some of those things that I've seen. It's how do you play as a team, how do you make it as a team? And I don't think that's African American athlete, I don't think it's white athlete, I don't think it's Latino athlete, I think it's just a generational type thing, where sometimes it's more about me. I mean, we see the T.O.s, we see the Chad Johnsons, we see the different ones that are stereotyped. I've met both those guys, and they're really nice guys. But what we see is a lot of negative things said about them, and they're not really helping themselves, are they? One thing I can tell you, when my football playing days are over, I did what this gentleman at the end told me to do, which was make sure I had good grades. And they were over sooner than I wanted them to be over. And so for me, it was not African American, Latino, white. It was, what kind of an athlete are you? What kind of a person are you? What kind of character do you have? And if you're going to play a game and you have good sportsmanship, then you have to do that all the way through. And so I think that's the difference that I've seen from 20 years ago when I may have been playing. You're too far. Yes. There we go. There we go. Okay. Coming down. All right, so always use this. All right, so this one is a question for Brian Dozier. What do you think makes up a caliber of a Penn State athlete over a Syracuse athlete, over a West Virginia athlete, or a Texas athlete? And what does it take to get to the D1A level that you're seeing of either athletes from Philadelphia or other places? What do you think it takes for the makeup of an athlete that way?
Well, to be honest with you, nowadays it's not a whole lot of difference from different places that you go, even places that were not, quote unquote, the top schools back in my playing days, which was around 88 to 92. Reason being, I think, is because of the media. You have programs that are coming up with athletes that are attending these places like South Florida, University of South Florida, that a couple years ago you never heard of that program. Simply because these top-notch athletes are now going to these places and getting the exposure. So these programs are growing, and that's just my take on how things are now. Now, when I was coming up, you didn't have the exposure everywhere. I mean, it was growing, becoming that way, but I think nowadays you can get an athlete, I mean, even the historically black universities are getting exposure now with top-notch athletes going to these universities and making their programs a lot better. When you look at a game on ESPN2 between, say, Tennessee State and Howard, it's a much higher caliber of football game than, say, back in 88 and 92, 88 to 92. So I think the athletes are spread out across the country now because of multimedia, and that's just my take on things. And plus, I mean, you got programs out there that'll prepare people before they get to that level. You got athletes that are, once they see that they're good at one sport, from age 10, they'll develop from age 10 all the way up to the time they get to the pros, you know what I mean? So a lot of that's playing a part in that too, so that's my opinion on that.
This question will go to, I guess we'll bring this into Coach Dunlap, who's recently in college have done some recruiting, whether it be over at Berean, and went through the recruiting process himself, and now going through it, eventually go through it with his own son. Coach Dunlap, what do you look for when you're looking to recruit an athlete, and what type of athletes are you looking at?
Well, in the movie, the coach touched on it. First thing I'm looking at are the grades. I'm looking at what has this student have done from the 9th grade to the 12th grade. I'm looking at a pattern. Okay, we see he may have good test scores, but what did he do in the classroom? The overall story tells a bigger picture than what your SAT scores tell. It tells what type of motivation you have, what type of preparation you put into becoming an athlete. Everyone wants to be a Division I athlete, but no one really wants to put the work into becoming a Division I athlete.
Can you say that a little louder, please?
Let's say this, in the movie, the reoccurring theme that I was attracted to was the amount of work that he put into whatever he was doing. Ernie Davis worked very, very hard. Nowadays, what I see from a lot of athletes, they think it's just going to come natural. Well, I'm naturally fast, I'm naturally strong. When I would recruit an athlete, I'm looking for the student who I feel as though can understand the game, who can handle the amount of information that's going to be given to them at a short period of time. The attention span, the overall character, those are the things that one make a program. That's how you build a strong program like a USF or like a Florida State or like a Penn State. Your student athletes make the program. So if you get a good athlete who's not really a good character guy, what I mean by character, who may get into a fight, who may not go to class, who may not do some of the things what our program stands for in order to make us successful, those are the athletes we tend to stay away from. I'll take an average football player any day to help us win football games and take someone who I feel as though could score 100 points, that could take over a game by themselves, because they're not really understanding what it really means to be successful. One of the things I would talk about when I recruit an athlete, although we want things now, we understand the end process. We want $1 million. We want this, we want that. But what did you do in order to obtain that? What kind of work did you put into it? Those that put the work into it are the ones.
Jump, jump, what you gon' do? What you gon' do?